And now I'm very excited to bring back a former NFL player and Princeton University two-time All-American. You've seen and heard him broadcast many football games over the weekend, and of course on Even Money, the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, and the College Draft. I'm very excited to welcome back Mr. Ross Tucker to the show. You can follow him on Twitter at Ross Tucker NFL. Ross, man, thanks for coming back on the show. Are you ready for some football?
Yeah, I mean, Kiev, it's here, man. Let's do it. All the training camps are open now. All the teams are practicing now. We're getting all kinds of news and nuggets on players and injuries, unfortunately, and everything every day. So it's, once it starts, it doesn't stop till after the Super Bowl.
That's right. That's right. We're going all the way through the Super Bowl, baby, and I'm super excited. This is my favorite time of year, prepping. You got some preseason coming on. We just did a podcast about some preseason angles, just good stuff left and right. So I know you're stoked, and you just got back from vacation last week, man. How was that?
It was great. Yeah, thank you for asking. I've never been there before. The Outer Banks of North Carolina. Went with my sister and her family. It was nice. They live in D.C., so we don't get to see them as often. So, and my sister's kids are all older. They're all teenagers. And so it was great for them to be with my daughters and, help them out in the ocean and stuff. It was awesome, man. It was great. I've had an awesome summer, but, I know how my seasons go. I get about 6 months, quote unquote, off from like February 11th to August 11th. But August 11th, I think, is the Eagles' first preseason game. And once that happens, I'll be in the booth for that one. And I go hard for 6 months.
Oh, I'm sure, man. No sleep, working 7 days a week. That's how you roll, Ross, because you're one of the hardest working NFL insiders in the business. Before we get into each division here, and we're going to talk about that with some win totals and some potential future plays. Do you have any thoughts on how things might be different or the same from last year? I mean, this is the first time that we haven't had crowds in the NFL forever, really, for before our time. And, there's some interesting numbers out there. Scoring seemed to go up significantly. If just, for example, in 2019, scoring was 45.6 points per game combined to 49.5 in 2020. Do you think things are going to kind of adjust back to what they were in 2019, or do you see any trends moving up?
So I think it's going to go down a little bit. I think crowd advantage really makes a difference for the offense. And I've been there, Kiev. I mean, I've been there when you're in silent count and the crowd's going crazy, 80,000 people, and either you have a false start penalty or the defensive end gets a great jump on you because you can't hear the count. It makes a difference. And I think we'll find out this year how much of a difference it really makes. But I'm going to be leaning heavy on some unders early in the season if we have jam-packed stadiums again, because I really do believe crowd noise can be a big advantage for the defense. Obviously, the home team's defense, but it's absolutely a factor I think should be considered. And I can, like I said, speak from experience. Never liked, obvious passing downs, so loud, have to go silent, and you got some stud rusher you're going against. Not fun.
No, definitely not fun. Hard to get your snap counts in for sure on those massive away games, especially in like New Orleans and some of those louder stadiums, Kansas City, right? So it's going to be interesting to see the change. And when somebody first asked me this question, a very smart individual, I misread 2019. I thought I read 48.6, but no, it's 45.6. So definitely some potential regression. But what I will say, Ross, is that Vegas really had – or I shouldn't even say Vegas. I'm going to say the sports betting market kind of had this down, because even though last year was the first year that road teams won over 50% of the games, 127 and 126, ATS betting was down on the dog at $572 for $100 bettors. And in 2019, ATS was a lot more favorable on the road team at 2,721. So I thought that was pretty interesting. When I remember looking at the lines.
Hold on a second. You said two different things. I want to make sure I understand. You said on the dog. You talking road team?
I meant to say road team instead of the dog.
Okay. Because I just wanted to make sure. All right.
No, thanks for clarifying that. But what I did notice, just in straight lines and straight power ratings wise, there wasn't a massive adjustment. I would have thought maybe like a half a point different for home field advantage just from what the market said. But man, ATS 127 and 126. I feel like the market had it down pretty well.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I take every situation on its own, Kiev, but my inclination early would be to lean on some unders and lean on the home teams with the crowd noise. I just feel like there's a lot of people, Kiev, that are going to be like uncaged animals, man. Now, who knows what's going on with this Delta variant? And I don't want to go down that road. I hate talking about that stuff.
God,
but, I don't know. Maybe it has an impact on how many people come to the games or how many people are allowed to come to the games. I don't know, man. All I know, though, is if it's packed stadiums, absolutely helps the home team, absolutely helps the defense.
And this could be your big home correction, because in 2018, home teams were 152 and 99. So road teams did not fare well that year. The big correction happened in 2019, where money line road teams were making a lot of money. But good stuff to talk about. And yeah, of course, the whole COVID thing, who knows what's going to be laid out in front of us. All we can go is by our information that we have available to us. Well, let's get into a few of these divisions then, my man. Let's start with the NFC North. Do you have any season win totals or future plays in this division?
Yeah. So, by the way, I won't say I'm on a book that I can't really figure out the rhyme or reason to how they have it listed. It would be nice if they had it listed as all of them in the same division. Man, they got the Lions at 4.5, huh?
Yeah, the market outlook isn't too high on them, is it?
No, I mean, that is low. Rattle them off for me, Kiev, and I'll tell you what I think.
All right, sure. We'll start with the Green Bay Packers. They're up top here, and their season win total has been sitting around 9. Now, obviously, we have some Aaron Rodgers news that he's coming back. Obviously, went into the stadium. He's pretty much a done deal. I mean, why else would he not be still in Hawaii? And he might be playing. You have the Chicago Bears at 7.5. You have the Minnesota Vikings at getting close to 9 here, a juiced 8.5, and like you said, 4.5 on the Lions.
And what did you say for the Packers again? 10?
It was at 9 where I saw it. So
really?
I wrote them all down. So let me.
I just saw where I was just looking. They were up to 10.
Okay, so that adjustment must have just happened.
I don't know if that was an old number you had or not. In fact, the one I'm looking at now has the Packers all the way up to 10.5.
Okay, wow. And that's it. So 10.5 is pretty high. Why don't you go by 10?
By 10, I would lean over. I mean, they've won 13 games 2 years in a row. I don't think that they're really worse. I do think it's maybe a last dance scenario for Rodgers. They're playing a 17th game. Concerns would be O-line health, losing Lindsley, bringing back Bakhtiari after the torn ACL, and they got a new defensive coordinator. I think their defense will take a step back. I'd still lean over, though. I still think there's a lot more chance they win 11 or 12 in the 17-game slate than they win 8 or 9.
All right. So you think that they're going to go over. I made what I like in this division, I took a couple future plays. Right when the Rodgers news came out way back in May or whatever it was, I did grab it was either the Bears or the Vikings to me, right? The Vikings were sitting at about plus 300. The Bears were at plus 600. I think there's not that much of a difference. So I did take the Bears at plus 600, but last week I hedged back and went double on the Packers at -120 that they win the division. Now, there's a lot of people on the Vikings. What I will say is they do have an easier schedule than the Bears, but that would be the team I'm probably rooting against because if the Packers or the Bears hit it, that would be a winning ticket for me. Any future bets on this?
Yeah, I kind of like the over for the Vikings at 8.5. I kind of like now this one has the Lions at 5 and the Bears at 7. I'd probably lean under on the Lions, man. I don't know that they get a 5th win. And for the Bears, 7 seems about right to me because it's a matter of when they actually go ahead and put a guy like Justin Fields in there at quarterback.
Right. That could happen sooner or later. All depends upon what Andy Dalton does to start this year. Let's move on to the NFC South then, and I'll start right here. I'm just going to tell you right now, I went under on the New Orleans Saints, and I did that at the 9, and I can go look for an updated number. I think it's pretty close to around 8.5 to 9 right now. I know there's some bad news on their left tackle, as well as Thomas is going to be missing some time, their best receiver. But the thing with me is I don't like the quarterback thing. I don't like the whole Winston and Taysom Hill going back and forth here. Now, when there's Breeze there in certainty, then it's okay to have a Taysom Hill. When it's Winston and Hill, I think that causes problems with the team. Plus, this team lost everybody in free agent. Trust me when I say this, Ross. I do not like betting against Sean Payton. It has not been a profitable thing. And I almost wanted to cut my arm off as I was walking to the window, right? But either way, I got there. Any place for you in this division?
Yeah, so I kind of like the under on the Saints as well. I think Michael Thomas is a big loss. I do think they have a good offensive line. I came out with my offensive line rankings this week and talked about them on the Fantasy Feast podcast. But they've got some issues defensively. I'm not down with the quarterback back and forth either. I don't know that they'll settle on a guy, and not having Michael Thomas as a security blanket for that guy is not good either. I think there will be too heavy of a load on Alvin Kamara. I kind of like the Saints under as well. Falcons at 7 feels about right to me. I kind of like the under on the Carolina Panthers. Carolina's at 7.5. I don't like their offensive line. I don't really think Sam Darnold's a big upgrade over Teddy Bridgewater. I'm not convinced that he is. I don't think Carolina gets there. I think Carolina and Atlanta are both about 6-7 win teams, and Carolina has to get to 8. I'm not sure they do.
I think the better play on Carolina is to make the playoffs at plus 275 because maybe Darnold in this contract year is going to be good. And you have to look at it from a travel perspective too. They're on the East Coast. I know they're in the NFC South, but they play the NFC East and the AFC East for their conference play. Their at-large games is a third-place schedule, and that's the Houston Texans right there. And they get the Vikings at home at least, right? And then they do have to go to Arizona, but there's a chance they could win that game. So I think that's a better play at plus 275. Let's move on to the NFC West. Man, this division might be the best in football, Ross.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The Rams have the 4th highest win total I'm seeing right now, at 10.5. That seems high to me. I know people are all about the Rams Super Bowl. I'm a little nervous about them losing their offensive line coach, Aaron Cromer. Now, I know Kevin Carberry from Stanford did a good job, but that's I don't know what happened there where they lost Cromer, but that's not a guy I would have wanted to mess with. So that's some kind of insight there to keep in mind. Rams at 10.5, Niners at 10.5, Arizona Cardinals at 8. You're right about this division. Seattle at 9.5. I think they're all going to be bunched up. I would lean more towards the Seattle over and the Arizona over rather than going for the Rams and Niners to get that 11th win.
Yeah, I mean the Rams, a lot of hype. Everybody's on them, but we've seen Matt Stafford before in the clutch, and even though he can be a great quarterback when they're behind, I haven't seen him really on a great team yet. So I have a lot of questions. I'm staying away from this division, but I do agree with you on your lean on the Arizona side. Let's move on to the AFC then. We have the AFC North.
AFC North is fascinating. I think Cleveland 9.5 is too low. I mean, Cleveland, I'd be very surprised they don't win double-digit games. I think Cleveland gets to at least 10 wins. Pittsburgh at 8.5, I'd be surprised if they don't get to 9 wins. Baltimore at 11.
Well,
I feel like
Ross, you have Cleveland at 9.5. I'm seeing juiced over 10.5 for Cleveland where I'm looking.
Yeah, right now this is VegasInsider.com, and this is from July 25th. Let me see another one.
Yeah, that's
you're right. I'm seeing another one where it's 10.5. So I don't know. Why don't you give me the numbers that we're working off of, Kiev? Because you're right. You know, that's a really important point, I think, is make sure you shop around and make sure you're looking at, the right numbers. The Browns, I'm looking at DraftKings now. You're right. They're at 10.5 with a juiced over. I'd probably still lean to the over, but I wouldn't feel great about it.
Yeah. So with Cleveland, they're a stacked roster. But as we discussed before this year, their expected win total was actually under the 50%. That worries me a little bit, but man, the second best roster in all of football, and that schedule is just looking so easy. I think their first 8 or 10 games is against some of the worst NFL defenses. So I'm probably not touching it, but 10.5 seems about right to me. But Baltimore's at 10.5. Pittsburgh's the one everyone's low on at the 8.5. So I would probably lean to the over in Pittsburgh. And I'm over
on Pittsburgh. I'm over on Pittsburgh. Look, they always win at least 9 games. I mean, didn't they win 9 games with Duck Hodges? I mean, or at least close to it. Pittsburgh will get 9 or 10 wins somehow, some way. I would lay off of Baltimore. I'd probably lay off of Cleveland. And as for the Bengals, I'm trying to find the Bengals here.
6.5 is what I saw.
I would lean under there. They're going to have to – that new offensive line, they're going to have to prove it to me.
Okay, I agree with you there. Not touching that with unless I see a completely fixed offensive line. Don't like their coach either. So, I stayed away mostly, but the Steelers at plus 400 or plus 350 to win the division ain't a bad look either. Let's move on to the AFC South then with a few minutes left. Anything in the division that has the 2 pretty good teams and 2 horrible teams?
Yeah, really, right? I mean, the Texans are at 4 right now. That is unbelievable. I kind of like the Jags under 6.5. I don't know that Urban Meyer's style is going to work, especially right away. So I kind of like the under 6.5 for the Jags. I like the under 9.5 for the Colts, Kiev. Look, I watched every snap Carson Wentz played in his career. I watched every snap last year. He was the worst quarterback in the NFL. He was. I mean, he was the single worst quarterback in the NFL last year. Now, he might be better. That's certainly possible. But I don't know that we can count on that. I'd rather go on the under right now. They have a left tackle issue, and they have a guy that was the worst quarterback in the NFL last year. And Titans at 9 sounds about right to me.
Okay. I lean Jacksonville under just because I don't think Urban Meyer is an NFL coach. It's going to be a lot different when he doesn't have 5-star guys and he can't spread it out as much. So in my opinion, there's a reason why his quarterbacks fail. But that's the only thing I really have there. I disagree with the Colts only because Frank Reich had his best year with Carson Wentz, right? When they're on the Eagles, Ross. But speaking of the Eagles, I just blew over that division, man. I'm fading Dallas at 9.5 wins on the under. But this division is looked at as, well, it was the worst division in the NFL last year. Do you have anything quick on the East? The NFC?
Yeah, I think Dallas's number at 9 is about right. I like Washington over 8.5.
Okay.
I think Fitzpatrick's a huge upgrade there. I think Washington gets to 9 or 10 wins. They got a pretty darn good defense, and I think he's a big upgrade, like I said. And call me a homer because I do their preseason games on TV. I don't care. I like the Eagles over 6.5. I just said earlier, Carson Wentz led the NFL, Kiev, in sacks and interceptions. He didn't play the last 4 games. You're the math guy. That's 25% of the season. He did not play, and he led the NFL in sacks and interceptions. Hard to do. Really hard to do. If Jalen Hurts is just the 27th best quarterback in the NFL, or even if he just takes 5 less sacks and 3 less picks, they probably win 2 more games.
I am concerned for what you said. That's true. Now, you did get beat up a little bit on even money on the Eagles. It seems like everybody's been fading the Eagles. Ross.
Everybody on the Even Money podcast comes on and tells me how much they're fading the Eagles, how much the Eagles suck. Now they signed Steve Nelson at corner, so they've got even more talent there. I think the Eagles are going to be better than people think.
All right. Well, and I don't disagree because I have them around 6.5, 7 wins. So I'm going to be that guy that doesn't say I'm going to bash the Eagles. They are in a honeymoon year with the new coach. Jalen Hurts is kind of a poor man's Lamar Jackson to me. For now, he has some upside, but that's just going to be so interesting how that turns out. It was Wentz the problem, or was it just the rest of the team? It's so exciting to watch that. And I did fade Dallas under the 9.5 because I just don't like McCarthy. Real quick, AFC East or any AFC West, any plays in those 2 divisions?
AFC, I'll go AFC East. I kind of like the Dolphins under. That's one that's jumped out to me. I'm not a Tua believer. AFC West, the one that jumped out to me is I'm kind of under on the Broncos too. I'm not a buyer in their quarterback market. I don't think they get to 9 wins. So I'm under the 8.5 on the Broncos, under the 9.5 on Tua and the Dolphins. There's a reason why these teams are rumored for Deshaun Watson. Right? There's a reason. Their quarterbacks aren't great.
No, they're not. Definitely good points there. Denver just has the easiest schedule according to a Vegas win total perspective, which worries me a little, but I still side on the side of their quarterback is just not there. Maybe he's got some extra motivation. We had all those Aaron Rodgers rumors, but it's a tough division with LA moving up. I think LA did a great job on their coaching hires. I was considering maybe a future play in the Chargers. I'm not quite there yet, but not out of realm. The one I'm going to take is Sean McDermott as a specialty prop for Coach of the Year. Now, the Buffalo Bills, as far as a Super Bowl future, you're not going to get a great price on that, but you can get McDermott anywhere from 16-1 or 30-1, and he was kind of snubbed last year. I do like the fact that at least their at-large games are against Pittsburgh in Tennessee right there. Of course, they do get the Chiefs, but I can see Sean McDermott getting Coach of the Year. So I'm going to stick with that one, Ross. We're out of time, though, my man. Do you have any other plays in the NFL that you want to go over?
No, I don't do a lot of what I call needle in the haystack bets, primarily because Fezzik tells me not to on the Even Money podcast. He doesn't like the math there. So I stay away from the defensive rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year, those type of things for the most part, unless I see something really, really juicy.
No, that's in general the way you should look at it, because in most of these sports books, the futures on a lot of these teams are absolutely horrible. So think of it, if you're going to take a shot with a needle in the haystack, you better find a number that's like a needle in the haystack. Ross, thank you so much for coming on this show. Where could our listeners find your wonderful shows and information?
Yeah, just check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. All of the shows, the Ross Tucker podcast, which is daily NFL info, Even Money, the betting one, Fantasy Feast for the fantasy guys. All of that stuff is available, rosstucker.com or at Ross Tucker Pod on social. But if you guys are listening to this, you know how to listen to podcasts. Please do me a favor, check those out. I can almost guarantee you'll like them, especially the Even Money podcast.
Yes, it is a fantastic show. Make sure you guys go and check that out.